You have everything.
I'm speechless today.
Should we start?
Let me just text Arco. I just saw it.
Yeah, I saw him. He'll come. Want me to go?
Yeah, maybe. Oh. Sorry, Del. David just went that way to look for you.
Oh, I mean,
That's okay. You're here. David's going to be on the end.
Sheep for that sheep. Molly asked me to offer an opening prayer, and the only prayer that I have is it's just four words. Thanks be to God, alleluia. Repeat after me. Thanks be to God, alleluia. A great honor and blessing that the deacon has at the end of our service every Sunday is to dismiss the congregation with words that help us remember to take with us all the love and ideas about justice and the inspiration that fill our hearts during the worship service, take it forth into the world and embody it in the next 7 days of the week. And that is, recently we've been using the word alleluia at the end, even though in our world today it's a word that we might find we trip on, because there are so many areas of injustice and violence and loss for us to contemplate every moment of the day. And yet, God has done wonderful work of transformation in this congregation through various outreach ministries, of which one we're going to talk about today, our Afghan refugee ministry. And since we have to give up the word alleluia as Lent approaches, we retire that word. I'm glad we can say it today because it really is the word that sums up how so many of us feel about this work. Looking back to August of 2021, Kabul falls. The government of Afghanistan falls, and thousands of people are thrust into a time of trauma, crisis, literally scrambling to leave the country, some only with the clothes on their backs and a few possessions they can grab to get out. Over a series of months, they make a journey through different parts of the world, through different military bases and host countries that were helping shepherd them along the way, to the United States, among other countries, and thousands of incoming evacuees, as you remember, were housed at military bases in Virginia and other places on the East Coast, wondering, even though they were now in a safe place, would they be in a place where they could build a new life, a life with a future for their children and a place where they could flourish. Meanwhile, at St. Columba's Church, a group of maybe a dozen or 15 people begin to meet in a circle to pray about this, to express alarm and concern about the events we're hearing about, and to try to build on the success that this parish had achieved in the last 5 years by working with another Afghan refugee family, asking, can we do it again? Do we have what it takes? Can we raise the funds? Do we have the resourceful people and the open-heartedness among us to do it again for a new family coming forward? Well, yes. Not one, not two, but 3 families made their way into our community and into our hearts. And we look at one another sometimes and ask, how did we do it? The reason is because of you. There are really three factors that have gone into making our Afghan refugee ministry one about which we can say Alleluia today. One is a generous congregation filled with the Spirit, restless, looking for ways to express God's love in the world and ready to say yes and take risks. 2, it's a team of volunteers. It begins with these folks up here, but by no means ends with them. A group of very resourceful, committed, compassionate people ready to lend their gifts and energies in ways that can provide companionship and mentoring to the families that we sponsor. And 3, a leader, a chairperson. It's true. It's true. Whose experience and knowledge and ability and compassion and contagious energy was the most important ingredient we needed to move this thing forward. And I am so proud and blessed to be even a small part of this activity. It's a thrill to be able to talk to you about it today. And I then turn the microphone over to Carrie. I was talking about Carrie. There she is.
Good morning. It's so great to be with you here to share a little bit about our work this year. I'm going to introduce Gardell. He is the chair of our finances. He makes sure that I don't give all the money away on any given day. And he's going to report on how we have been, I think, exceptional stewards of the money that this parish has provided us.
Hi, I'm Gardell Gefke. I am finance chair in a sense. I really don't do that much other than say yes a lot to spending money. Comparing our first family 5 years ago, we raised $50,000 from the congregation. For this second set of families, we raised $50,000 from the congregation. In addition, through some in-kind gifts and some other specific gifts for particular needs, in total we raised about $80,000 for each effort. Now, the first family had 3 kids. A lot of driving was required because they weren't just all going to the same place, right? They went to 3 different schools and this and that. Also, there were some medical issues which were more severe, and so, and also we didn't have the pressure. So that initial hunk of money was basically consumed really building this family's a very strong foundation. And they're very well set up now. So in the second set of families, we originally were only going to do 1 family after the big crisis in Afghanistan that re-inspired us to, we had been tired, you know, it took a lot of energy with that first family, but people, especially Carrie, got reinvigorated, and here we all are with these great people. And so the second set of money, we had a much stricter budget, so to speak, in terms of supporting generously when they first arrived here for 3 months, and then gradually tapering it down. The State Department requires you to have like 6 months of support. We knew that wasn't going to happen based on our previous experience, so we scheduled the money to stretch out over a year. And that's worked out pretty well, especially with Carrie being, she's pretty much a hammer in terms of making these, you're trapped between wanting to be a paternalistic parent, you know, I'm gonna guide you with your money, to realizing, no, these are adults, they had careers, professionals in Afghanistan, and they can figure out what to do with the money that is available to them. But we were much harder in terms of, or much less flexible with their quibbling with their employment situations, shall we say. So, you know, they had to get a job, they had to get on track, to make this program work. And by whatever mercy, and along with, we did have some special circumstances like dental work. We spent a fortune on that, but luckily individuals had approached the committee, Carrie and David, and wanted to, that generosity that David was talking about, wanted to give. And so something like dental work or some training programs, that are going to be very critical to these families long term. It sort of worked out, and every day I'm fingers crossed knocking on whatever pieces of wood I can find, because right now it looks like, so April will be about a year after we got the 3 families, and in spite of a pregnancy and other medical issues and people changing jobs when maybe, we're the parent, we don't want you to quit your job that's paying you money trying to do something else. The families have found their way, and all 3 seem to be very well-footed going to the future. Our first family, who had a child recently, a second child recently, is moving to Richmond. They have a family support there and a much greater network. And so we're very, and mercifully, we got a free apartment for them, which is one of the reasons that we were able to then consider a second family. And the second family that we originally met had relatively good English skills, gave us a lot of confidence. And then they had a friend, and they'd both been in the Residence Inn after months and months and months, and they were going to lose their place. So we were like, okay, we did it. And somehow all these folks have done most of the work, getting them aid, getting them health care, getting visas, and everything that you can't believe all the work that these folks have done. So we feel like we've done we got a 3 for 1, so to speak, compared to our last experience, but that last experience really taught us all the pitfalls and things that can go wrong, and so we were psychologically much better prepared when those occurred. So that's my story.
Thank you, Gardell. And I just want to add to that we've really worked very hard to find good partners in the community. And so with regard to the financial resources, we were very fortunate that St. Mark's Episcopal Church in particular gave us close to $9,000, and that primarily went to dental costs that are not covered by Medicaid. And so we would have had to really, say, we can't assist you until it becomes an emergency. So the families were able to do much postponed dental work thanks to that donation. As you can see, there's a slideshow of photos of the 3 families with many of our Afghan families. It kind of takes you from the move-in, which a lot of people participated into helping them move into their new homes, all the way to first, welcome dinners and first days of school, and also some special outings to the National Zoo and monuments and fall festivals. All this was made possible by many parishioners who are not up here right now. People have responded, and it's been an incredible way that the parish has engaged with these families. The pictures take you, the last one shows one of our first family members who became a U.S. citizen at the end of last year, and a second family member, his father, became a U.S. citizen about a week ago. So that's very exciting to see that come completely to fruition. The volunteers that are here, I've asked them to speak, and they're part of the leadership team, and they lead other volunteers as well. I've asked them to speak about just how they and others use their special talents and gifts to assist these families, because a lot of the work they do is not up here. These are the happy, celebratory, friendsgiving, and lots of happy moments. A lot of the in-depth work goes on behind the scenes, and we don't photograph that. So I'm going to pass it off now to Alice Goodman and Shelley Geshen, and they are leading the employment efforts.
Thank you, Carrie. We learned a lot from the first family, from the Quadras, and so we tried to use some of those lessons in handling these 3 families. to help them find employment, which was the priority once they had housing. And first thing we do is we sit down and meet with them and try to get to know them and figure out what are their strengths, what can they do, how good is their English, what other things do they need to get a job. And once we've gone through that, one of the speed bumps that I had in doing this is that now all employers use online applications. And for these folks, their personalities are really their selling point. Their smiles, their friendliness, their eagerness to work, all of this is a selling point, and they can't use that in this kind of job world. It's very difficult. So I went back to the old-fashioned way, and through parishioners and friends, I would just go to local businesses and stop and talk to the manager or the owner and try to figure out, you know, whether it would be a good fit if they had an opening. And some of those turned out to be very good partners. For one, Bandit Taco, which is right up the street from here, almost hired him on the spot, one of the guys. He had such a great personality. Now, Wegmans, on the other hand, they do online applications and their interviews are over the phone. And those don't go so well because that's not your first language, it's very difficult to have an interview over the phone when you can't see the person and you're not sure what they said. And so that was kind of hard. And then we went to all kinds of places around here, Stroh-Snyder's and other paint stores and the local UPS and little grocery stores and things like that. And while they find a job, the first one may not be the right fit for them, and they're not going to know that until they've spent some time there. So one of our first hires was at Silver Diner, and I encourage everyone to go there because they've been wonderful. They will train, they increased his hours, and now, as Gardell said, this family's moving to Richmond, and there is a Silver Diner in Richmond, and they're willing to transfer him possibly to the restaurant there. And he's someone who wants to get into a management track, and I think he would be a very good candidate for that. Other ones that we found, and some of these we found through the families themselves. They brought to our attention a group called Emma's Torch, and they help people, they put them through a culinary program, an 8-week program where they pay them, and at the end they help them find a job. And one of the mothers went through this program, was the star of the program, and the first job she got wasn't the right fit, and then she went out and found her own job. So now she's working at Moby Dick in Bethesda, and she likes that, and that works better for her because she has children and couldn't hold a full-time job. So I think that, and then the second gentleman who was working at Silver Diner also is going through this training program, and that will make him a much more valuable employee to Silver Diner. So we have high hopes for him. So all of these things, it doesn't always work out the first time, and then you just have to go back and do it again. And they find their own way. They have their own contacts that they meet, other Afghans, and that's where they find how to get a used car and how to, other kinds of jobs. So now 2 of their fathers are driving DoorDash, and they find that that is a much more flexible kind of a job for them. So it's, it's a work in progress, and it took all of us to do it. It's not just, we just don't do, each one of us don't do our little silo, because the health affect the employment, and the job affects whether they can get to the doctor and all that. So it's a group effort. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Shelley Geshen, and thank you guys for what you've said so far. I mostly worked on employment for family number 2, which was the Becerri family, and I've learned so much from this experience because I really thought, okay, the dad had 13 years of IT experience for Voice of America, and okay, he'll be a cinch. And his wife taught complicated database programs for the university. He has a master's degree and speaks 4 languages. She has a bachelor's degree, and I don't know how many languages she can speak, to tell you the truth. And when they came, he already had a resume. She had a CV that was about 12 pages long. So the main things that I could do for him, because we started with him, was polish up his resume, make it more into accomplishments rather than responsibilities, because it was kind of boring to read and didn't show what he had brought to the job. Practice interviewing. He hadn't had an interview since he was 22 years old. He worked for the same company all that time. And it's also interviewing in another language, in another culture. And then, of course, we developed a strategy. And I thought, well, I mean, with all of these people that I work with, I say, we have to have a short-term strategy and a long-term strategy. Because I can just I try to put myself in their position. If I were doing what I have done, I mean, I had a master's degree, I had a lot of experience in a couple different fields, and I was uprooted and went to another country, it would be really hard for me to become a cashier or to work in a clothing store where I hate all the clothes and have no interest whatsoever in whether people buy them. It would be really, really hard. It would be hard to bus tables. So I actually was trying to empathize with where they were. Ann Romig, who is our communications person, put a notice in one of the weekly bulletins about the fact that we had a person with IT experience and what leads did people have, and they were great. The parish responded so well. And I don't know, 8 or 10 different people got his resume, looked at every opening in their company, sent them to other people, and nothing came of it. Mostly because Abdul's a generalist, and most of the positions in America are specialists in IT. And also his certifications are a year old, but I don't honestly think that was the problem. So I guess my thoughts are that it's really, our experience with all 4 families has been that it's almost impossible for them to start working in their previous fields. We really thought they would, but you know, I used to do this thing when there were still cabs and not Uber. I would ask the cab driver where they were from and what they had done in their own country. And after a while, I stopped doing it because it was too depressing. They would say, well, I was an attorney, or I was a judge, or I was a physician, or I was a something. And now they're driving cabs, and they're happy about that. They're safe, their families are safe, everybody's in a school, they feel good about it, and yet there's so much wasted talent in this country with people doing something that they have all these skills and experience that they can't use here. English fluency is still a factor. I think with many people, their verbal skills are really quite good. Their written skills, maybe not so much. They usually can read quite well, and that reading is the easiest, speaking is the next, and writing is the worst. And so none of them ever wrote cover letters. I wrote all the cover letters. Alice and I together did the online applications. But that means that what we want to do is position them to succeed. And would they really succeed in a job in which they had to like write regular reports about IT usage and stuff? I'm not sure. Also, the way people get jobs in this country is not from online applications. That's generally a big black hole that you throw things in. You get jobs by talking to people and by sort of circling around closer and closer to your objectives. One person knows you're there, and then they hear there's an opening and they recommend you, or they tell you to apply. That's how it works. Try teaching networking to people who speak 4 languages but not yours so well. And they're introverts and they're unsure of what it's like here. I set up a couple for Abdul and he missed both of them. And he really just, I think, it's hard for them to say no to us. They should say no, I'm not comfortable doing that. But they don't. They don't want to disappoint us. They just don't do it. So, you know, it takes 6 to 12 months to get a professional job, and they needed to work immediately. So that's why I kept talking about long-term and short-term. So we're in this for the long term. We'll keep helping them just like we keep helping the Khawajas who've been here 5 years. The other issue is when employers when they say in their cover letters, I'm willing to start at the beginning and move up, the employers just think they're overqualified and won't interview them because they figure as soon as they find something better, they'll leave. So, all that said, the thing that I conclude is that these families are remarkable. They're, you know, what you need to get a family started is, you know, the 5 pillars. You need an apartment, you need to get the kids in school or in childcare, you need to get them enrolled in benefits, you need employment, and you need the backlog of health and medical needs, all the health needs met. And the employment is there. They have figured it out themselves for the most part. Abdul and Bakhtash both got loans from someone they know who's Afghani, so they bought cars and that's how they're driving. They like the independence of it, and I don't think they're making tons of money, but they're keeping everything afloat, and more power to them. They haven't had a single, I asked Abdul, is there anything we could have done better to help you? And what worked and what didn't? And he basically thought the whole thing was great, even though we didn't find him an IT job. So they're really happy here. And I'm so proud of them. And I'm also really proud of this team and all of our partners who helped.
Good morning. The Connies arrived in late March, as you know, and Najiba was 2 months pregnant with her second child. She faced challenges during her pregnancy, but throughout she was positive and upbeat. Our journey began, Najiba's and mine, when I started taking her to her prenatal appointments. I've learned in our drives back and forth about the family, their life in Kabul, how they left Afghanistan, and mostly how much Najiba missed her mother. But thanks to the incredible technology, she FaceTimes every day with her mother and other family members. And technology also helped us during our drives. There would be words that I couldn't figure out how to explain to her. So when she asked me once, what was the doctor wearing on his head? I had to tell her to look up the word yarmulke because she had no idea what it was. And as you can imagine, that led to a very interesting discussion. Najiba's prenatal appointments all took place at the Mary's Center, which, if you're not familiar with it, is not far, it's near here. It's not far from the intersection of North Capitol and Missouri Avenue. It provided her very impressive care. Even when her pregnancy progressed, they could get a Dari translator within 5 minutes. And he or she, mostly he, would do the translating, this mysterious voice coming through the computer. I felt a little awkward when we had all these men and we began discussing, or the doctor and Najiba, her female body parts, but somehow it went pretty smoothly. If you're not familiar with the Mary Center, it's a community health provider serving over 65,000 patients of all ages, incomes, backgrounds, and has operated in the DC area for over 30 years. Now, the high point of this pregnancy, of course, was on November 15th. Najeeba had an appointment at the Washington Hospital Center to be induced to deliver her baby. After 24 long hours of great pain for Najeeba, Malwadad and I tried to support her as much as possible, but the doctors decided to deliver the baby by C-section. Minutes after his birth, I get very emotional. I held a 9-pound, 3-ounce baby boy, Subhan. I don't think she could have delivered him any other way. And it was an incredible, life-affirming experience for me. And I've been certainly very grateful for this time to get to know the Connies and also all the amazing volunteers as we've supported these 3 families as they settled here.
Sharon, I'm just going to interrupt for a second and say, and they were incredibly thankful to have Christina with them throughout, and so were all of us. Sharon.
I think we've all become grandparents on this committee. April 23rd, 2022 was the day the Basseri family moved into their Silver Spring apartment. I was there helping when I happened to overhear Abdul, the dad, mention to Carrie, by the way, Carrie, don't forget, please, that Omra, his 4-year-old daughter, needs new ear molds for her hearing aids. So I kind of perked up overhearing that because I'm retired now, but I had a lifelong career in speech pathology and audiology. So the spirit was there, right? I mentioned to Carrie as I left, by the way, if you need any help with those ear molds, I could be here for you. Well, in true form, Carrie, who was juggling a million things that day, didn't forget that I had said that. And within 24 hours, I think I had a Zoom link to join 3 people on the medical team to discuss ear molds, I thought. But by the end of the Zoom meeting, I found myself in charge of 4 children under the age of 6 at the time for all of their medical needs and all of their dental needs. That was 2 from the Basseri family and 2 from the Amini family, and that was a lot more than just 2 ear molds. But I dove in and soon found out Hassanat Basseri she had tonsils so gigantic that they almost blocked her airway and needed quick surgery with a tonsillectomy. And then Hassanat and Marwa both had vision problems and they needed glasses. And then all 4 children had such massive dental problems on their little baby teeth that their treatment could only be done under general anesthesia, which had never happened in my family before. So we did all of that, took care of all of that. I'm happy to say all their little mouths are now healthy and that they only have to go back to Smile Land every 6 months for their cleanings. But that didn't include Omra yet, and she had special needs with her moderate hearing loss. So we ended up at the Children's Hospital Speech and Hearing Department in June, I think, for her ear molds. Like a typical little girl, she picked out the pink ones with the glitter and was pretty excited about them. But at the same time, the department tested her hearing and realized that she qualified for 2 new hearing aids as well. We waited most of the summer for those hearing aids to come, but they did arrive just in time for school to start at Rosemary Hills, and she marched in with a gigantic smile on her face and 2 pink glittery ear molds in her ears. The Rosemary Hills School has been incredible, helping to plan lots of accommodations for in the classroom as well as special help with her speech, her hearing, and her language development. The teacher wears an FM system so that her voice is directly transmitted to Omra's hearing aids. So like you were saying, technology is incredible. Carolyn and I, who's going to tell you more about education, is a retired school principal, and that combined with my background, we've been invited to be on Team Omra at Rosemary Hills, so we actually help develop her educational plan. All that was going super well, and then we hit a little blip with Omra's hearing. A follow-up appointment with the audiologist showed she was developing fluid in her ears. So we waited a month and rechecked her, and it wasn't any better. So we were back to the ENT department where they did the surgical placement of tubes, like many of us have had in our children. And that was the trick. They've been fantastic. She is now infection-free. Her hearing aids are working at their maximal best. And according to Rosemary Hill, she's a delightful student who learns well and is speaking well and is just, they're thrilled with her. So all that said, I would like to say I am happy to report that the Basseri and Amini children all seem to be thriving in their new country. They're healthy, they're happy, they're learning English faster than their parents, they're doing well in their schools. And for me, I do feel kind of like a grandmother. I love it. Added 4 grandchildren and have been part of this amazing team that is just such an honor to work with and to think how much we have helped this family who have been so brave, I think, in coming here and working with us.
Okay. All right, I see Carrie looking at her watch, so I'm going to speed this up. But sitting here among these ministry members, I'm reminded of lines from Romans that in Stirring the Waters last week we reflected on. Paul said to his people, "So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to the other. We all have different gifts," and I think you've seen that here today. As a retired educator, I had the good fortune of facilitating the enrollment of the children of the Basseri and Amini families in Rosemary Hills. It's the neighborhood school in Silver Spring, which is in walking distance to their homes, their apartments. And I'm so thankful that the girls have really benefited from small group instruction, English lessons, and meeting friends from all over the world. And a testament to this sweet spot where they landed is that one of the girls, upon completing her first day of school, said, "This was the best day of my life." The girls qualified for summer school in July, and in August, I reached out to the director of the Kids After Hours after school and summer program, someone that I had known when I worked as a principal, and I asked him if there were scholarships available for these 3 girls. He said to me, "No." And as you can imagine, my heart sunk. But then he responded, "They will come as my guests." So that worked out really nicely last year with volunteers who were willing to drive them back and forth. This year, trying my luck again, I reached out, and Carrie had said we'd really like them to be in camp for 3 weeks of August. So I said to them, 3 kids, 3 weeks, what can you do for me? And he said again, "They will be my guests." So that is a $3,000 gift to our program, which is really great. And meanwhile, our own St. Columba's Nursery School provided a full scholarship for Suleiman, the son of the Kahanis. And additionally, English Now, which is an organization in Bethesda, provided intensive English language instruction for 3 of our Afghan adults at a very subsidized rate. And as you can imagine, that has really helped in the employment search. And I just wanted to say one other thing when I was reflecting on this. According to a UNESCO report, as recent as this January, 80% of school-aged Afghan girls and young women, which is 2.5 million people, are out of school. Nearly 30% of Afghan girls have never entered primary education. I do not know what the educational opportunities would have been for our girls in their home country, but it fills my heart with pride to know that they have been given a first-class education here in our country.
Thank you all. I just want to hope what you hear and what they're saying is how this parish has a lot of gifted people who reach out and really in very direct ways live God's love. And they're doing it to benefit these families and in a sense many others. We also have been really blessed by their efforts and others' efforts. Many people you'll never hear about who use their networks and their partners to help us assist these families with legal problems, getting asylum, getting visas. It's really been remarkable. Cammie, do you want to open? We can open up for a few questions. Do we have time? Are there? Oh.
I think we have time for just a couple questions here. And if you wouldn't mind coming over to the stand.
If there are no specific questions, I could do one more thing. Can I have people who have volunteered, just that are out there in the audience, can you please stand? Because there are many of you. There's so many of you that have helped. I mean, I just want people to know there's many people who support this work. I also want to say, the big question I would be asking is, what's next? And because I'm going to keep them moving. And no, it is sad to acknowledge that the refugee crisis is not going away. We know there are refugees continue to come from Afghanistan. We now have migrants seeking asylum who are coming from our southern border. There's really just, we get almost daily emails and asks from the diocese and beyond. John Nolan and Cammie and Courtney Hundley have been meeting particularly about the migrant situation, and we're going to be beginning to present opportunities to join a community engagement group that can assist with that. We're going to continue and begin, because the families we're now sponsoring, we really feel like we've come close to accomplishing our mission. Our mission is always to welcome them, to ensure that they become self-sufficient and independent. And they're really pretty much there. And so we're starting to look at, will we sponsor other families? What will we do next? And we do our very best to keep the parish informed through forums like this, through the e-news, through our listserv. So I hope, we're incredibly grateful for the opportunity and many others to do this work, because it really, I can only speak for myself, but I think they'll agree, it really strengthens the bonds of friendship and fellowship also within the parish. We all know each other now really well, and we spend time together, and we celebrate together, and that is another aspect of the work. So thank you all for being here. If anybody else has anything else to share, I think that's a wrap. And thank you. Thank you for your generosity. It makes it all possible.